Hello everyone, sorry I don't think I'm going to take half an hour for my couple of points. Firstly is a load of thank yous. This didn't come together by accident. So first people I'd like to thank are Keely and Libby, who were the guides on the buses. I think did a magnificent job, and I'm sure you'd agree that our future is in good hands with people like them, so well done to you. The second is to George. Where are you, George? Are you in here? He's putting stuff away. He did all of the plumbing integration and make sure everything works. He's a stickler for detail, as many of you know, but that's why most things work first time. Thank you to him. There were 12 other suppliers who got involved in making things work together in our ecosystem. I'd like to thank both Leicester County Council and the City Council for helping us get into their signal systems and make Gloucester work and things like that, and for letting us use their roads for real. It's quite a brave thing to do, to let us be your test track. And to the Leicestershire Fire and Rescue Service, who brought a vehicle that was sitting there with its lights on for everything to detect, so thank you to them. I'd like to thank the drivers of the coaches, who are very smooth and professional. That's Dave, Kieran and Mal. A few thank yous to people from the the public sector also. So thanks always to Paul from Portsmouth, who went to one of these early sessions and saw some PowerPoints, and now comes to these events with cars full of equipment, software and services that he's built. And I think they're a very good example of how a small local authority can do wonderful things. I'd like to thank David from Traffic Wales. Are you here? Well, I'm going to say thank you in Welsh anyway, which is diolch yn fawr, even though I got it wrong. And finally, of course, thank you to the Elcrig team, marvellous people, and I'm sure you're very thankful for all the organisation that goes on behind the back. Behind the scenes. And finally, thank you to yourselves for all the feedback you've given us. This is the sort of Pearl and Dean for the World Congress in 700 days' time. So any feedback, any ideas you give, you can find me somewhere, I don't know, bar probably. I think the whole thing about this is kind of seeing is believing. So many of you hopefully now know what some of the services we talk sound like, look like, how they work, how sometimes they don't quite work properly, where we need to improve them, where they're good enough right now. Now at this point, if Steve Gooding was here, he'd have a few things to say, but Steve decided to go to the West Indies for some sunshine, and I just checked sorry? Jamaica? No, it was actually Jamaica, yeah. I just checked the weather there, and it's actually cooler in the West Indies than it is here, so no. What he would say was something along the lines of, so what needs to be true for all of these services to roll out? And of course, the first answer that everyone will give is some money, some funding to make all this happen. I don't think anyone would argue with that. I think we also need to have that funding in order to sustain some of the innovations we've seen. So since we started on our UTAC test days, 2 of the suppliers have gone into administration because people weren't able to buy their stuff. That's not, they didn't want to buy their stuff, it was procurement and so on got in the way. And I think we also need to have a bit more connection between some of those sort of high-level PowerPoints that we've seen earlier in the week about policy and some of the systems that we're thinking about and what you saw in the nuts and bolts of coaches and the engine room. And I think that's something that we can really work on in terms of narrowing that gap. We shouldn't take forever to do that because there's a road safety strategy, and if you've seen the targets for that, I'm sure you're all aware, they are pretty ambitious. So if by 2030 we're going to save 35% of KSIs, we need to get going on stuff now, and hopefully some of you have seen some tools that you might be able to apply, steal, borrow, whatever. So hopefully you've seen that we moved from kind of ideas through to PowerPoints, through to small-scale stuff on test track, and now big-scale stuff with 297 of you. So hopefully the seeing us and understanding that has helped you understand a bit more about what might be the things you want to do. So at that point, I shall leave you and pass you on to Joe.
So I'm also inviting Jonathan up as well for this session, but I'm really conscious over 2 days where it's all been about technology. I've gone old school, and I'd like to know, have you found This morning in particular, thumbs up. I'm hoping everybody's green in the room. Am I not doing that one? Okay. So in the session, we just want to give you, over the lunch break, we tried desperately hard with Kerry's help just to pull together some of the insight that you gave us across the 3 groups, and we wondered whether there would be any particular themes that came out across all of the groups, or whether there were any differences as well. So we asked you 3 questions, as you will recall, and based on what you heard of the 34 priority services, which I think are growing by the day, actually, aren't they? On balance, were these the right services to adopt? And so overwhelmingly, the picture is very encouraging, so that's good news. But the takeaways, I think, just from a high-level perspective, I think they really echo the informal consultations that we've held already as well around funding. So yes, this sounds about right, but we need the funding, we need the investment, we need the infrastructure to make this happen. And I think one of the themes that was coming out quite clearly was it's also situational dependent. So it depends on your context. So are you from somewhere that is an urban area or a rural area or somewhere in between where your priorities might be different? So I think that is something that definitely we take away. And also there was a really good theme that came out in one of the groups, is that we'd asked you in terms of priorities, are these the right ones going forward? But of course what you hadn't seen was the whole list. So sometimes it makes it quite difficult to say yes to these first 34, when actually, I don't know how many there are going to be in the list, Jonathan.
I think
thousands.
Yeah, well, certainly hundreds.
Certainly hundreds, to know actually are there things that we could bring forward. So all of those things have been duly noted. Thank you very much. And in terms of services, we were asking you what else, what might we have missed? And so we've just summarised some of the kind of key things that came up more than once, really. Vulnerable road users, active travel came up quite a lot. And I guess also, depending on whether you're trying to make a modal shift as well, that's going to be like really important. Jonathan, I'm going to bring you in at this point because I think what we know, because we've got a bit more depth than you've had certainly in the 5-minute overviews today, is actually we think these are covered, aren't they? But we need to do a bit more framing and redefining of what these are. So can I just bring you in at this point?
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, really happy to be here and WSP sponsoring the live demos that Andy and the team have led, and George. And actually one of the key things, some of you visited our stand, which we appreciated, where we showed some of the more detail, all this data that's sitting behind there. But I think one of the key takeaways for us is to make sure that even when we're talking about high-level services, we make sure some of these key areas that are covered further down in terms of applications or use cases, there's lots for pedestrians, active travel, parking, definitely. We also got sitting behind some ideas around, what kind of protocols and data needs to be standardized, and public transport and autonomous vehicles are very much on the list. So I think what we're going to do is go away, look at all the comments from the Slido, the post-it notes we gathered from you, and just for Darren and the team, and liaise with Andy as well, do a new list that is a bit more inclusive with some of these terms. So even at the high level, you go, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So your feedback's massively appreciated. And then finally, we asked you this question. I don't know whether any of you thought, well, is this a leading question? And it depends. I think there were some discussions in some of our groups, the way that we might have framed the question. But looking ahead, and we were making the assumption that, yes, we've got the funding in place. Yes, the infrastructure is quite right. How confident do you feel that connected services could become part of mainstream transport operations? And I know in one group, somebody said that they may have answered this differently if it had said will become part of mainstream transport operations. So actually the picture's very positive overall. There were some of you that were maybe a little bit more hesitant, maybe quite rightly so, given that we've just kind of covered things very high level today. And I think some of the consequences we probably need to understand a little bit better. There were some really good points that were made around the unintended consequences of us rolling out these services and the security level aspects, or the fact that they may be open to abuse. So definitely things that we've duly noted as well. I think the broader, I guess you don't like this term ecosystem, but I'm going to use it because I can't think of another word, but that sort of broader ecosystem as well being important, so working with others like utilities. Something that has come up, and it came up with the original sort of informal consultations that we did back end of last year, was the challenge around tech obsolescence. So no soon as we've got some tech, it becomes obsolete quite quickly, and it's having to keep up with that as well. And actually the big thing as well, which is part of the journey going forward, how do we then scale this? So we've had some super insight, some more validation, more evidence today that we can take away and start to embed into the next phase of things. So I'd also just like to thank, and I don't know if the other WSP colleagues of yours are in the room, but thank you ever so much for the work that you've been doing on that. And particularly today, it was quite a challenge in 45 minutes to get around so many sessions in the room. So thank you for that.
Can I just say something about tech obsolescence?
Come on, jump in.
Can I just say something about tech obsolescence? One of the beauty about connected services is many of them use these things, and people buy one of these about every 2 years. So people get worried about buying servers, and they get worried about buying things, but think more about buying the services that go into something that the punter buys. The average age of a car is getting older. It's now 11 years. But those of you who know me will say at this point, you can connect anything, including a veteran car on the London to Brighton run. So just think about not buying stuff in the way you used to buy it. Think about buying stuff like you buy Netflix or your car. You don't buy it anymore, you just lease it for a bit, and somebody else provides you all the tech. That would be my point.
Really good point, thank you. So, moving on to the next session, can I welcome to the stage Kerry? Kerry is going to give you some insights and a bit more information about what's coming up next. Can I also, just whilst I'm here at the stage, I know this might be done later, but I just want to thank Kerry and all of the team at Elcrig for all their hard work in putting together such an amazing 2 days. So thank you to Kerry and the team.